So this is going to be a bit of a rant video. It comes mostly because I've been seeing a lot of different conversations happening across Twitter and Facebook and all these different groups on forums of a lot of the drama that's been happening with Transformers 1, and essentially how people are saying that not only do they not want to go back to live action movies, but they also blame heavily Michael Bay for ruining Transformers. And I always feel that that's a very strong statement because there's a lot of nuance to that. And it's also a reason why I want to talk about it here, because I feel that Twitter and Facebook groups and forums are just the worst possible place to have any kind of discussion, especially Twitter. I mean, geez, it's like you're limited to the amount of characters that you could really say something. It's pretty crazy. But to really start, I mean, especially someone like me who's lived it. You know, I got into the online fandom of Transformers in 1995. I got the internet in 95. I'm an old man, people. And I got to see the rise and falls and the ebbs and flows of Transformers through that online fandom. And as the world became global and really was greatly represented online, I got to see those reactions in real time, especially then in the post-2000 boom of every household getting the internet. And when it comes to Michael Bay and those strong statements, I will say this. You know, back in like 2004, 2005, Transformers was in a bit of a weird place. Armada was pretty successful, and it had a pretty good push in terms of media with the cartoon and everything, and the comic book, and Dreamwave was firing on all cylinders. There was a lot of good feels with Armada, like let's say in 2002, 2003. But by the time you got to 2004 and 2005, Energon, while intriguing as a toy line and a lot of cool stuff went on there, the return of traditional combiners, RC getting her first mass retail Western figure, and just a lot of really cool ideas that just popped up within that toy line itself. Hey, we got a good Rodimus figure even. A lot of other stuff just didn't do well for it. The show underperformed, wasn't very popular with the fans on the Western side. In Japan also, it was kind of less well received. And then there was a lot of little weird things happening too. Dreamwave kind of fell out with their business, and Transformers obviously got left with no comic books and stuff, and you know, all the other media and stuff. There wasn't a lot of video game stuff because you had that one Armada game at the tail end of Armada, and then there really wasn't anything else. There wasn't fast food tie-in promotions outside of some European stuff. It was in a weirder place. And then when you got into 2005, 2006 with Cybertron, it was a little more of that. And granted, Cybertron's Japanese version, Galaxy Force, is one of my favorite Transformer series of all time. It's definitely in that top 5. But I will recognize that it wasn't well received and liked by both sides of the globe. And it's just how it is. You know, it's just how it is. Toy sales weren't that great. Viewership wasn't that great. And it was in a weird place for Transformers. I wouldn't say that Transformers was dying on the branch. It wasn't failing as a brand, but it wasn't those heights that it had, let's say, with the Unicron trilogy, or even more so what was happening during the Beast Wars era, especially in those peaks in like 97, 98 during late season 1, early season 2 with Transmetals and stuff. So it was in a weird place. And already the seeds had been planted, and those live action movies were going to come one way or another, but I felt that they came at a time that was greatly needed because of where Transformers especially was in that Energon Cybertron bubble. And when the Michael Bay movies came out, and keep in mind, when that Michael Bay movie came out, there was no Marvel MCU yet. That would not come until really the Iron Man movie and create that interest. Yeah, there was the X-Men and the Spider-Man movies in the early 2000s and the Blade movies, but there really wasn't that interest from mainstream. And I've always said this many times. 2007 was a very important year on a lot of different fronts because Big Bang Theory came out. Whether you like it or not, it made being a geek mainstream. and it made people laugh at jokes that maybe they would have never laughed at because of a laugh track. I'm not going to get into Big Bang Theory deeply. I'm not a fan of it personally. What it did for the greater thing when it comes to geek culture, especially from a corporate standpoint. But I will say this, it was an important factor in 2007, and the iPhone really became a thing in 2007. And then all of a sudden, people that would never be caught dead sitting in front of a stationary computer locked into one room in a household could now say and do anything from any spot in the household, or dare I say, anywhere they want in the world, whether it be a bathroom, in a bar, or that of their bedroom on the third floor of their house. It didn't matter, or in the attic or anywhere. So that really opened it up too, that people's voices could be heard and people could now look up things and, hey, maybe I like this Iron Man stuff. Let me look it up and go down that rabbit hole of Wikipedia and everything. So it opened that up. And that perfect storm that happened with the Michael Bay movie and those two things led to the acceptance of liking a brand that's about toy robots. Let's be real, because that's what it boils down to in the end. A brand of toy robots that transform into things made by a company called Hasbro, and the stories written around those toy robots that transform into things. And it worked great. People showed up. Was the first movie good? It had a good beginning, middle, and end. It told its story. Steven Spielberg had a little more creative control that first time around, on top of Michael Bay adding his little unique touches to it. And let's be real, Michael Bay did help with the action, which was important, but we pretty much accepted it for what it is. Because up to that point, we didn't really have live action movies that were slavishly loyal to source material anyways. We lived in a world where up to that Transformer movie, it could have been a Super Mario Brothers the movie 1993, or a Street Fighter movie. It could have been the Double Dragon movie. It could have been the Resident Evil movies. It could have been like the Doom movie, which came later. There's a lot of those great brands that when adapted to live action, we just kind of had to accept how different they are from the source material, and that was just kind of the norm. Even stuff that's celebrated, like the Mortal Kombat movie, did take liberties in different areas. So when we watched this Transformer movie, we were conditioned for that. We were already used to stuff being kind of to begin with when they reach live action. And this, at least, despite the fact that the robots were kind of secondary in this movie, was an entertaining movie and telling the story of a boy and his car and a girl and action and explosions. There was humor, there was action, and in between all of that, we got some really good moments. Not a great movie overall, but moments of the arrival of the Autobots, that great final battle scene. Be it short, be it, only 5 minutes or so, and sprinkled in with comedy and a little bit of humor and a little bit of action. It worked out. It worked out. And the movie made $700 million, and people celebrated Transformers, and Transformers was back. It was back in the mainstream. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue. And from personal experience, I ran a Transformers Montreal Facebook group in 2006, and it had barely 30 members on it. After 2007 of June, it exploded to like 200, 300, 400. Granted, that group doesn't exist anymore. Facebook went through a whole bunch of rebrandings throughout the years. But the point is that I saw that right away now, people even locally here were interested. And someone like me, now I'm on television. Now I'm talking about Transformers on This Morning Live in Canada. Now I'm in the newspaper talking about Transformers. Clearly something was going on here. And it wasn't just, hey, this movie's really good and the fans kind of appreciate us getting something on the big screen in Hollywood. When 2009's Revenge of the Fallen came around, that's when the wheels fell off the track. That's when the writer's strike happened, and the domino effect of that kind of stuff led to what I feel is what really hurt Transformers. Not Michael Bay, but Hollywood studios and the execs. Those are the individuals that really ruined Transformers, because they wanted to put out a movie ASAP. They didn't care if it's a good movie. They didn't care if the writing was ready. They didn't care if the robots are featured or not. They just want more. More, 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 more. Pump it out. Milk that cow until it is dry and just spitting dust. And Revenge of the Fallen was put out. Again, there was that new car smell. We all saw Revenge of the Fallen and we're like, oh, that was fun. But as we started to ruminate on it and really think about it, it wasn't that good a movie. And especially, I think, like the first time I saw it, I was kind of like, oh, that was pretty fun. And then upon a second and third screening, I started realizing, oh, this wasn't a really good movie at all. And it was kind of a bit of a slog. And I know this is going to be a bit of a controversial statement because I know there's a lot of people that like Dark of the Moon, but Dark of the Moon was a lot of the same of what Revenge of the Fallen was. The only saving grace with Dark of the Moon was there was some good twists and there was more featured robot dialogue and character development that didn't really exist with, let's say, Revenge of the Fallen, and definitely didn't exist with the first 2007 movie. So I will give that to Dark of the Moon. But then when we get into Age of Extinction and The Last Night, it was just more of the same of the robots are secondary. There's a big human story here. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The product was not the feature. Because at the end of the day, this is about selling toys. This is about selling toys that are robots. There is no Cade Yeager action figure that's going to come in all kinds of different sizes and scales and price points and a Hot Toys and this and that. No, there's going to be nothing. There's going to be no Cade Yeager bath towels, Cade Yeager, cups, Cade Yeager posters. But yet Cade Yeager is going to be 80% of the movie. And it's going to be his story. And it's going to be his, hero's journey. And Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and all of that, it's a secondary story that's in the background, despite the fact that the name of the movie is Transformers. And that's Hollywood, because Hollywood wants to hang out with Marky Mark. Hollywood wants to hang out with actors and have them on the red carpet and have them be at award shows and have them do this. It's always been Hollywood, because Hollywood doesn't like to celebrate their voice actors. They really don't. If they really did, then animated movies that were considered box office successes, how come no one celebrates the voice actors from Frozen or the voice actors from Aladdin or the voice actors from Lion King unless it's James Earl Jones, And even then it's because of James Earl Jones's work in live action and actual Hollywood as opposed to his voice acting work. They don't celebrate voice acting. And they recognize that, and thus they don't want to do animation. And when they do animation, they bring in their Hollywood actors because, once again, they want to do that. A very famous G1 voice actor, who I will not name him because I don't want to hurt his ability to get work, but in a private conversation, he hated how he would sit with voice directors and they would constantly favor hiring Hollywood actors because they spent their whole lives working with the dirty voice actors. Ugh, I got to hang out with Peter and Scott and Frank and all of them, and then go home to my wife and just say those same old tired names again, when I could say, oh my God, I got to direct this Hollywood actor. I got to direct this Hollywood. They wanted to go home and brag about big names instead of those dirty voice actors. So Hollywood, unfortunately, even from the voice casting process, kind of got skewed. And that's really, at the end of the day, it's not Michael Bay that hurt Transformers, that ruined Transformers. It was Hollywood and all those suits and all those execs that make those decisions that really, at the end of the day, ruined kind of the Transformer movieverse. And all the success that we had, at least from a fan standpoint, and all the love that we have for Transformers 1, what hurt Transformers 1? Once again, it wasn't Michael Bay. It wasn't, the fact that the movie was bad. It was Hollywood people. It was ultimately just Hollywood. Terrible marketing, terrible choices of how they want to put out the movie, and dare I say a near 17-year, slope, because we reached those heights in like 2007 to 2009, and then it's been slowly sliding ever since then. And once again, people move on. Those Marvel movies came out after 2008, 2009, shift of interest from geek culture, and people just find other things to be interested in. They will not be, ride or die with Transformers for 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years. People move on. And if you don't sell them on it properly, and you really only get one chance. And like, again, I've said before, that first trailer didn't do any favors for Transformers 1. So you only get that one chance. Was there better looking trailers later? Of course they were. But with the casual audience, the normies, as I like to call them, you only get one chance. And if they see that first trailer and they go, I don't care, they move on. And if they hear there was a second or third trailer, they don't care. They've already moved on. Their eyeballs have been put elsewhere. And you could pay all you want your big Hollywood name actors to run around and do media junkets and circuits and all kinds of little skits and stuff and wired interviews and everything. But if you don't convey through those actors this movie what the movie really is, which was a dark and big character-driven movie as opposed to a child comedy, well, who is it really to blame then? But it's not Mr. Bay. And I'm not going up to bat for Mr. Bay. I'm just saying he did his job, which was boom, bang, explosions, girls, slow motion, and all of that. After he does all of that, it's up to the screenwriters, Hollywood, and everything to decide how much of it is robot, how much of that is, actually the things we care about. So is it Michael Bay's fault? Not really. It's Hollywood's fault, and it's Hollywood being Hollywood, and it's probably not just why the Transformer movie underperformed, but why a lot of big franchises that we love just aren't doing well, why they're just not seeing the same numbers they did before. Greed, unfortunately, always eats up everything, and it's always the snake eating its own tail. And these Hollywood people, when you reach that kind of wealth, when you reach that kind of fame, unfortunately, there's nowhere for them to go. And then you start just going into absolute Caligula decadence of madness. And that's a whole other discussion for a whole other time, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me know what you think about all of this. I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts out there because it's such a loaded topic that I know in the future we're going to be sitting down with other people from the professional side of things that worked with Transformers. You know who, and we're definitely going to dive deep into it more when the time comes. But let me know what you think about all of this, and we'll talk again really soon here on the Transformer Slag podcast. And as always, thank you for listening.